Greetings everyone, this is Moto Blizzard, aka Mozard, and today I'm going to talk about the modifications that I've done on my 2016 Suzuki GSX150F. A couple of my viewers kept asking me about it, so I thought, you know what, let's just make a video on it. Now, while planning the video, I got a brilliant idea regarding the name of this motorcycle. So Suzuki calls this bike Gixxer, which is incorrect because Gixxer is the nickname of the GSX R series of motorcycles. This, however, is a regular GSX. So I thought, how about we call it the Gixxer 150? You gotta admit, it sounds pretty catchy, doesn't it? Imagine how hilarious it would be if someone asked you what motorcycle you ride and you tell them that it's a Gixxer. I don't know about you guys, but I'm gonna continue calling it that way from now on. And so, without further ado, let's begin. Mod number 1, Handlebar Mirrors. So I replaced the original fairing mirrors of the SF with the handlebar mirrors of the naked Gixxer 150. And I've said this several times. The fairing mirrors of the SF, they are stupidly long, heavy, and expensive, and they severely reduce your maneuverability in traffic. And so, in comparison to that, the handlebar mirrors are much, much better. At one point, I did try out bar end mirrors as well, but I really did not like them because they increase the footprint of the handlebar slightly, and that is a big problem in Indian traffic. In addition to that, they attract a lot of attention. So if you leave your bike unattended in a public place, people might screw around with your bar end mirrors. So it's just best to go with handlebar mirrors on this bike. Mod number 2, registration number decal. So in this bike, the front number plate holder is located just below the headlight, and this is the worst possible location to have the front number plate. It just spoils the entire look of the bike. In addition to that, the front suspension, if it compresses a little too much, the front number plate will actually hit the fender and damage it. So for those reasons, I removed the front number plate holder and the number plate itself, and I installed a registration number decal. Now the decal is nothing fancy. It's very simple and clean. The font is simple as well, and it is clearly visible from a distance. And this is important because I once spoke to a traffic cop, and I asked him whether this is okay or not, and he told me that as long as the registration number is clearly visible from a distance, he has no problem with it. So the legality of a registration number decal is very much dependent on the laxity in the rules. It may vary from state to state, from one city to another city, from one traffic cop to another traffic cop. So keep these things in mind. Now, I've seen some bikes where the registration number sticker is located on the front fender. In my opinion, that location is worse than the windshield. And like I said a few moments ago, if the cops cannot see your registration number from a distance, then they might stop you and possibly penalize you. So keep those things in mind. Mod number 3, Tinted Windshield. So I took a small piece of window tint and I applied it on the inside of the windshield. Some owners prefer to apply a vinyl wrap on the outside of the windshield. Vinyl wraps are usually opaque. I did not want my windshield to become completely opaque. I wanted to be able to see through it. So that's why I went with the window tint instead. Mod number 4, gloss black lower side fairing panels. So this is a 2016 Suzuki GSX150F, like I said in the beginning. And the color scheme of this bike is called gloss sparkle black, which is a fancy way of saying that it is gloss black. And at the time, for whatever reason, Suzuki thought that it would be a good idea to make the entire bike gloss black, except the lower side fairing panels, which were matte gray. I'll put up a picture on the screen. Now, a couple of months after I bought my motorcycle, Suzuki launched the 2016 Special Edition Gixxers, and the color scheme was called Matte Fibroin Gray, which is again a fancy way of saying just matte gray. And yet again, they had some kind of twisted logic going on. Only the front section of the bike was matte gray. The lower side fairing panels, the rear quarter panels, the grab rails, they were all gloss black. I seriously did not understand what Suzuki was thinking. Anyways, I went to the spare parts department and I purchased the lower side fairing panels of the special edition, and I got them installed on my motorcycle. Once they were installed, the aesthetic value changed so much the bike looked spectacular. Even the mechanics were amazed how drastically, the appearance of the bike changed just by replacing the lower side fairing panels. Now in 2017, Suzuki changed the color of the lower side panels from matte gray to matte black, which in my opinion did not look that great in contrast with gloss black. And another year later, in 2018, Suzuki changed the color from matte black to gloss black, and that's when the color scheme truly became gloss sparkle black or gloss black. It took Suzuki 2 years to realize their own stupidity. Mod number 5, front LED indicators. So this is the OEM indicator that the bike comes with, and as you can see, it's quite large. It's a conventional indicator. It's a bit heavy, and it's pretty expensive for a conventional indicator. Now once it's on the bike, you can see that the footprint of the indicator is quite large compared to the LED indicator, and this is a problem in Indian traffic. Now in the naked Gixxer SF150, this indicator is located somewhere here, so it's not a big deal. But on the SF, this indicator is located on the fairing, so it sticks out quite a bit. And in traffic, unintentionally, sometimes someone else might get really close to your bike, or you might get really close to someone else's bike. And if there is sufficient force acting on the indicator, it will snap. In fact, both my front indicators broke in traffic. And for that reason, I bought these LED indicators from AliExpress. Now, these LED indicators, they are called flush mount indicators because they're supposed to be flush with the fairing, and these specific indicators were originally designed for CBR 600RR. But when I looked at the dimensions, they seemed like a perfect fit for the indicator socket on this fairing. Now when the indicators finally arrived, I soon realized that the indicator will not fit in that socket without a proper kludge. So I decided to do something else. I took the connector piece of the broken OEM indicators and I fixed the LED indicator at the end of it. And this is what I got. It functions beautifully. Aesthetically, it looks pretty good. More importantly, you can see that the footprint has reduced quite significantly. And I started to see the advantage of that in traffic almost immediately. Let me give you guys a small demo of the indicator. Now the quality and the brightness of the indicator is not that great, but it does a pretty good job. I'm pretty happy with it for now. Mod number 6, mirror block-off plates. So these are the block-off plates, and they're actually prototypes, handcrafted from steel. And how should I explain this? When you remove the fairing mirrors along with the adapter, you're left with a attachment socket on the fairing with 2 holes in it, and that looks pretty ugly. So to cover that attachment socket, you have these mirror block-off plates. Once you cover it, it looks pretty nice and clean. That's the basic idea behind it. Now, these are obviously prototypes. I do have something else planned in my mind, but for now, I'm pretty happy with this. Mod number 7, tail tidy. This is by far the biggest, most nerve-wracking mod that I've done. And before I get on with the mod, I want to talk a little bit about how the rear fender, the original rear fender, actually works on this bike. Now, the rear fender of the Gixxer SF150 is composed of 3 parts. You have the first, second, and third. The first piece, which is the main piece, attaches to the chassis, and it's got the indicator sockets, the number plate illuminator socket, and the number plate holder. And this is the part that actually attaches to the undersection of the tail. The second piece goes right underneath the first piece, and it actually hides the cables for the indicators and the number plate illuminator. Now the third piece is the mud flap extension, and it goes right beneath all of that, just like that. And it provides a larger coverage area for the rear tire, and this is especially very useful in the monsoon season. And basically that's how the rear fender is. Now the first piece, the main piece, is priced at 281 Indian rupees. The second piece is priced at 152 Indian rupees, and the third piece, the mud flap, is priced at 349 Indian rupees. So that is actually more expensive than the main piece for some reason. I don't know why. Now, when I was planning for the mod, I had two options. My first option was to remove the rear fender completely and install a metal sheet or an ABS plastic sheet so as to cover the underside of the tail. And the second option was to cut the rear fender and then get the number plate bracket fabricated. I went with the second option, and let me tell you why. Now, if you look at this main piece, the first piece, which attaches to the chassis, this top section here is actually very important in terms of utility and function. And I wanted to retain this part on the chassis. So what I did was I cut this fender in an oblique fashion, flush with the undersection of the tail. And so this top part remained attached to the chassis, and the rest of it actually came off. And I'll put up a picture of the cut-off part. Now, once I cut off the rear fender, I got the number plate bracket fabricated. It's actually handmade. It's still a prototype. It's not perfect, as you can see. But for now, I'm pretty happy with it. And some of you might cringe at the idea of cutting the fender. It's not so bad, to be honest, because this rear fender, the main piece, it's actually pretty cheap. Like I said, it is priced at 281 Indian rupees, and you can buy a spare piece, which is what I did. I bought a spare piece immediately after cutting the original fender off. And if I ever want to go back to the original setup, I can do that very easily. So yeah, it's not really a scary thing, to cut the rear fender. Now, these are LED indicators, and I bought them along with the front LED indicators. I absolutely could not reuse the original OEM indicators because there was no way to do it. So let me give you guys a small demo. As you can see, the quality and the brightness is not that great, but they do the job, and I'm pretty much happy with it for now. Now, when you buy LED indicators, keep one thing in mind, that you also need to buy an LED flasher relay, because otherwise your LED indicators will be hyper flashing. Now, by looking at the dirtiness of this rear section here, you might have already guessed by now that there is a drawback of having a tail tidy. There's no mud guard. So if you ride over a wet surface, water and mud is going to splash everywhere. And if you're riding a little bit faster, it will come all the way over onto the seats as well. Now, I don't have a problem with that. I can deal with it. But if you can't deal with it, then a tail tidy is not an option for you. Now, as far as the monsoon season is concerned, I actually do not ride in the rain. I use my car instead. But if I do decide on riding in the rain, then I can simply change my tail tidy setup to the original stock fender setup, and I can do that within 30 minutes. So I don't have a problem on that front either. But the point of doing a tail tidy is to expose the rear tire, and the size of this tire is 140 by 60, which looks phenomenal on this particular motorcycle. Now, I've seen certain owners who do a tail tidy and then at the end they install a tire hugger. Now look, I said this a few moments ago. The point of doing a tail tidy is to expose the rear tire. If you're going to cover it up with a tire hugger, then why did you do a tail tidy? If you think that it looks better that way, no, it doesn't. The stock fender actually looks much better than a tire hugger. But I guess at the end it's just a subjective opinion, right? Anyways, that's all I have for you in today's video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comment section below, or you can message me on Facebook or Twitter. Links will be in the description. Until next time, take it easy.